Hey,
All
good
right.
afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Kirkmeyer and Karen Lynch of Insights Now. We're excited to start this webinar. We're going to wait just a minute or two as we see some people are logging in. Sometimes it takes a minute or two to get through all of the things that the woman says to you on the phone or on the computer. So we'll give it just a moment and then we'll start in just maybe 30 seconds or a minute. Well, Karen, I've got a couple minutes after 2.
Yeah, I have 2:02. I say let's roll. This is probably a good time for anybody who can't see our screen to kind of send us a chat or something in that box there to let us know that you can't see the screen. But assuming that we don't hear from anybody, I guess we're all systems go, Sarah.
All right, sounds great. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this month's webinar. We're super excited to have you participate with us. Now, we've been focusing on clean label in lots of different ways, understanding consumers, learning about clean label scores of ingredients. And this month, we have the opportunity to share with you some insights that we have in non-food categories, such as oral care, skin and hair care, home and fabric care. These categories are so important to consumers when we think about engaging with people in a holistic way and really understanding all of those pieces together. So Karen and I are here together to share some of this great information and content that we have with you. So let's get started. All right. So I'm just making sure that I clicked okay and got the
That's perfect.
got
Yep.
everything moving right. All right. So Karen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. So happy to be co-presenting with Sarah. I am Karen Lynch, for those of you that don't know me. That's the photo on the left, for those of you that don't know me. I'm co-presenting with Sarah. I am the Senior Director of Qualitative Insights here at Insights Now. I've been with the company for just over a year, but prior to that, I've had, over 20 years, probably pushing 25, if not a little more at this point in the industry, specializing in qualitative insights and gleaning those insights primarily from major CPG companies, looking at to all of the nuances and the whys behind consumer behavior. So happy to be here today, Sarah.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Karen's got so much rich content to share with us from a qualitative research perspective. So I get to kick us off and kind of wrap us up at the end. But let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah Kirkmeyer. I've got about 20 years of experience as well in the industry. You know, my perspective is a little bit different, kind of growing up in sensory and consumer research within the ingredient suppliers, flavors, as well as I've worked within non-food categories as well. So kind of harnessing all of that information together and joining Insights Now last year, really had the opportunity to really delve deep into consumer behavior and, feel like we've got such great information and knowledge to share with you. As we start, I just wanted to take a moment and ground us in the perspectives that we're going to be providing to you. It's from an Insights Now perspective, and just kind of the way we think about sensory and consumer research is really about behavior. And we were founded in 2003, and our approach is really to look at people and their behavior and the whys that they make and the decisions that they do, starting with empathy and focusing on understanding. So we put that together, and it's led Insights Now to be recognized as a really innovative firm, and I'm proud to be a member of the organization. And what we're able to do now is to share this knowledge and insight and the way that we're looking at the world really through a behavioral lens. Through these webinars. And so they're monthly webinars. So if you participated in previous months, we had the opportunity to go into Clean Label and lots of different ways and approaches that are contemporary and ways of which we're really delivering forward-thinking perspectives. And so that's kind of where we are right now. So that grounds us, but let's also ground us in the technology. So we've got a chat box. And so, we're going to be sharing some qualitative insights. And Karen's going to debrief us at the end, like we're kind of in the back room. So, we hope that you'll pose some questions to us and foster a discussion. And, put those all in the chat window over there on the right. So we've got that opportunity there. If you are experiencing any technical issues, just let us know. We'll do our best to help as well. All right, so let's just kind of get started with, a little bit of background about Clean Label. It's an interesting opportunity and time that we're living in when looking at consumer behavior. And at Insights Now, we've invested in engaging with consumers who are driving this free from movement. You look at everything. I was in some qual research recently, and it's like, well, we want a shorter label. We want to know there's transparency. This is really important, and things change and evolve. And one of the reasons why I love my job is that we study humans, and humans are ever changing. We're not static. We change through influences. We change through different knowledge that we gain and decisions that we make. And so as we think about kind of the changes and everything that's going on right now, I'm excited that we're able to develop this community of Clean Label enthusiasts and learn directly from consumers, and not make assumptions about what we think we might know, but actually gain some specific knowledge and interject their voice directly into the conversation. So at Insights Now, we have this Clean Label enthusiast community. It's a unique research community made up of forward-thinking primary shoppers who identify with this movement. We have a battery of questions that they go through, but just in general, to look at these people, it's about 16% of the primary grocery shoppers, 24% in some, urban and West Coast markets specifically. And there's a slight skew of higher level education, but most everything else is related to Gen Pop. But they have distinct points of views, and they like to talk about ingredients, claims, and brands, and will let us know their points of view. And this offers us the ability to find answers quickly and insights to solve some of these challenges. And as I mentioned, provide that voice of the consumer in this area. We're always learning about this community. And, we talked last month about the Clean Label score. And we talked, and those people who engage with us through our subscription and things like that, we learn about behaviors and all these things about the consumers, and that provides us this opportunity to say, wow, 78% of Clean Label enthusiasts read ingredient labels. That's pretty expected, right? But they have lots of brands that they're engaging with, the different ingredients. And so this knowledge and understanding leads us to the opportunity to dig really deep and learn from these individuals. And so that allows us to expand not only from food into non-food, and really look at, okay, so what can we learn from these individuals? We know that their choices related to food are really important, but other categories are as well. Free from is permeating their lives, and we wanted to learn from our community and these other influences. We looked across a variety of non-food categories, and there were 5 that rose to the top, including oral care, fabric care, home care, hair care, body care. Karen's going to go into all of those. And we wanted to make sure that they were engaged in this category and see how important these things were. And this really rose to the top. And what we're going to find out about these individuals is how do they define Clean Label in the context of these categories, what brands and products, and what ingredients are really important for clean in each of these categories. So with that foundation, I turn it over to Karen to kind of help us learn a little bit about where we can go and what we can learn about consumers in these categories.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, it's really exciting. And the reason why I say it's really exciting is because you have to keep in mind, I'm innately curious. So the fact that we were able to do some deep dives into non-food after talking to individuals so much about, clean labels in the context of food, I just got quite a thrill out of it personally, so I hope to bring some of that to you today. Again, these are the categories we're going to cover, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we chose these, touching on what Sarah just said. When we posed to the greater community the question, how important is a clean label in the context of oral care or home care, many individuals selected these in their top two of, from highly important down. So top two box scores for the importance. Those are the ones we recruited from. We had a really great response rate because they were, I think, quite interested in giving us more information about their points of view. They're very engaged. So we had 29 participants, for instance, in the oral care study that we ran. And, then we ended up with about 15 to 20 in the other categories. We had about 13 people in body care. And the reason why I bring that up is to, of course, have my qualitative caveat over what we're sharing today. It's qualitative. So these are individuals who were curated from people who were highly interested in these topics, but that's who we're going to learn from, right? They are leading the charge. And so anyway, so again, knowing that it's qualitative, what I'm presenting here, we're going to be listening for hypotheses, listening for nuggets of insights that you might come up with. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, go ahead and use that chat box or pose a question. At the end, I will actually stop. We'll have a debrief slide and we'll talk about anything that comes to mind. So I also want to point out that these individuals did represent pretty much a good cross-section of ages. We were deliberate about our recruit to make sure that we had people from their 20s up towards 60. So we were striving for that representation, also having a balance of gender and geographic location. So we didn't want to have those skews influencing the qualitative data that we were collecting. All right, let's get started in oral care. Again, I told you this was our largest kind of pool of participants, if you will, and it was really fascinating because the primary thing that they got across to me was how worried they were that their families might ingest a oral care product, right? So they were really motivated by safe products, something that wouldn't have an effect or an adverse effect on a body if ingested, especially those that were parents, as you can imagine. They were worried about these products getting into their growing children's mouths, if you will, and being ingested. So maybe close into food on that level. They were really interested in that transparency, and they were really trusting that companies were self-regulating, that they were being truthful. And when I say trusting, they were actually, we'll talk about in just a moment, they were actually really using some main brands, some brands that wouldn't be surprising. Listerine, Colgate, Crest, Sensodyne, Oral-B, Aquafresh. So that took me back a little. I was thinking that more of them, although we did have some representation of people were using Tom's of Maine or Nature's Gate or Dr. Watkins, I thought those numbers would be higher among this sample, but they were relying on these credible brands to be truthful and to be transparent about how they were making their toothpaste and what things were for. They did talk about wanting a readable letter. I think one quote was, "We don't want an ingredient that's 30 letters long in that ingredient panel." That may not be a surprise. But again, what is a surprise is the trade-off of efficacy and natural products that work and how they were making this decision. Because again, you'd think they were looking for those brands that would offer them a more natural or clean solution, but really they needed efficacy. They wanted these brands that had been around a long time to meet their clean label needs. And there was a paradox at play there. It was interesting because they didn't have specific ingredients to avoid, right? They talked about avoiding artificial colors or alcohol, for instance. And fluoride was quite polarizing, actually. Some people were like, it has to have fluoride, and some people were like, no fluoride. So that's probably in across all the categories, one of the two most polarizing ingredients. These people also, though, did believe that there were natural possibilities not being leveraged. Again, things like mint, neem, coal, baking soda, even hydrogen peroxide perceived as a natural product, perhaps being under leveraged in this category. So what do we do with these types of findings? Well, like most researchers, we start to noodle around on insights. What do those things mean? One of the first kind of insights I had was actually that clean, there's some different perceptions around that because we're talking about the cleanliness of your mouth. So they were struggling with the paradox of what's clean in terms of having a clean mouth and proper hygiene, and clean in terms of a label. And that's where the tension lies. it seemed that an oral care product that wasn't necessarily clean label but worked was going to be okay. But if an oral care product didn't work and had a clean label, well, that was not okay. So they were making very specific trade-offs there for efficacy in this category. Cleanliness of the mouth was trumping cleanliness of the label. Interesting. Again, there were some ingredients that might have been completely unaccepted in a food product. I keep thinking about that hydrogen peroxide, right? Because we all use that maybe in first aid. It was interesting that it came up here as a natural solution, but also something like xanthan gum. We've talked in one of our previous webinars about a clean label score, and I think that that's actually an unacceptable food product. But here, when the functionality of the product is actually understood and perceived, it was not really a problem. So that was super interesting for us. Again, I talked about the opportunity for natural ingredients to be leveraged in this space. There's probably some opportunities for any of the companies that make these products to really dig into whether coal can be used, whether neem can be used or leveraged. And finally, I do want to touch on that fluoride. I think we've passed the days where everybody accepted the fact, certainly the days of my childhood, where we wanted all fluoride in our products, right? That in our oral care products. We're shifting a little bit, and if you can see from the consumer verbatim here, fluoride is a rat poison and it's used in human toothpaste. That's not clean. So again, kind of a real dramatic quote as to the potential perception of danger with fluoride. So if companies are using fluoride, and if that's one of their key benefits, as many of the companies are, they probably really want to look into this and look at their kind of marketing and claims and make sure that they're reassuring people of the benefits of fluoride, or just recognize they won't win people over and maybe start to have an alternative. Anyway, super interesting. We're going to move on next to home care. Additionally interesting information. I mean, really, it was such a great deep dive for me. So let's take a look here. What are the things we learned about the clean label? How did they define a clean label in the context of home care? Safety was key. Again, these people were worried about their children or their pets. Also some items in their home, whether it was surfaces or floors. And I should sort of call out, we did fabric care separately from home care. So this really has to do with the cleaning products, the products that they were using to clean their home, their home's hygiene, if you will. Safety was a big deal, and they also were talking about having the products that were derived from safe ingredients, whether they were natural or biodegradable ingredients. So those ingredients that would not cause harm or damage to the people, again, that might ingest their products, or even some of the things, the items in their homes. And this is where we start to go into efficacy again, right? So when it comes to certain brands, there were brands that they perceive as safe. Super interesting, right? Because again, there were certainly people who were using the brands like Method and Honest and Seventh Generation, and a few kind of newcomers to the scene, Baby Ganix and 4Monk and Better Life, for instance. But several people were using, Tide, Pure Clean, Clorox, Windex, and Purex. So companies that have been around a long time were giving them that perception of efficacy and cleaning. Now, we'll talk just a minute about bleach, but I also just want to say when it came to the ingredients, there were a few ingredients that they were avoiding. They were avoiding things like parabens and triclosan and glycol solvents and formaldehyde, in addition to artificial colors. But that ammonia and that chloride and that bleach, they had real concerns about the toxicity of that. So some people all on board for the efficacy, some people were saying, nope, that's toxic. That's been proven to have adverse effects. It's a threat to our well-being. It's dangerous for our kids. It's harmful. It could pollute the water, etc., ruin your home items. I also want to call out, bumping back up to the second section here, I moved ahead, but price as that common pain point. There were people in our community who were saying to us, I'd use these products more often, meaning perceived as clean. However, they are more expensive and I can't sustain those choices. So price is an issue here. Let's move on to what all of this means. Again, those efficacy cues that people are used to are still important for the clean label to trigger that purchase among clean label. They want those cues to trigger this perception of efficacy. but price was a deterrent, right? So they were trying to figure out ways that they can use the products perceived as cleaner while still having it be an affordable price point when they were under some kind of financial stress. They were growing their list of awareness compared to, again, what we heard in oral care. They were coming up with some specifics, right? These toxins that they perceive, or things they perceive as toxins. That pull of being free from is really the stronger pull for them right now in terms of ingredients. So again, moving in that direction, and not moving quite as far as what you'll find perhaps in other areas. Again, just to reiterate about that bleach. Somebody had said if you can swallow it, it's dangerous. The idea is that this harshness, we'll see this more in some of the other categories too, but the harshness could cause cancer, it could reduce a sperm count, and their fears were really quite real and poignant. So taking a minute and digging into hair care, that's what's coming up next here. Let's see what we've got. Again, we started with the definition. It's interesting as they start to shift, right? So here, these products had to contain natural ingredients to be clean labels. So suddenly now it's a little more overt that they wanted things, they wanted to leverage certain ingredients to start to become clean, natural ingredients, if you will. Again, familiar, simple, pronounceable ingredients. That might not be a huge surprise. Low, no fragrance, no artificial colors or scents. But also once we got into hair care, we start to talk about not being tested on animals, right? And kind of that cause starts to make its way into their definition of a clean label. So super interesting. This is where that changed. We'll also see that again in body care, but fascinating that those two categories, if those are the ones you work in, that, you know, animal kind of lens starts to come onto this. Anyway, the product has to work in terms of their choice for brands and products. They have to work without harming hair. They're worried about damage. They're worried about thinning hair or losing hair or drying out the scalp or causing some sort of an itch. So there becomes this very tangible result from using a product that might be perceived as unclean. They also are still worried about switching to a clean label product if it won't work for their hair. So there's a whole lot of experimentation that has to happen in this space for them to find something that's just right. And again, price is an obstacle to usage in this category too. Interestingly, there are brands that are meeting their needs. So some of them would be, let's see, Pureology, Argan Oil, Honest Company, Garnier, Redken, Shea Moisture, Burt's Bees, Seventh Generation. Even Dove was being perceived as clean on some level. They were looking to avoid, in terms of ingredients, those carcinogens. Again, that kept coming up. That's a real worry for this community, is whether any of the ingredients that they're ingesting will cause cancer down the road for themselves or their families. We started to get a longer list of ingredients though, and a lot of it, again, the results of using these non-clean ingredients could be detrimental, could cause skin irritations and damage, but also this other fear, right? And when I say the list gets long, here's one kind of quote on the bottom right of this page, but parabens, BHA, BHT, DPT, DEA, you know, silicone, sulfates, sulfur, I could go on, sodium sulfates on my list, sodium chloride. Interestingly, sodium chloride, we talked a lot about in past webinars too, about how sodium chloride is a no in food, even though sea salt is one of the highest clean products on our, you know, or receiving the highest clean label score. So yeah, so from sea salt to sodium chloride, which is a no in food, is also a no in these products too, coming up there. And of course, the perfume, fragrances, dyes, synthetic colors, lots of things were starting to pop up here in terms of what to avoid in these products. So what do we do with all that? You know, kind of a hypothesis that we're working with is this idea that the visible damage, the immediate and negative consequence, is reinforcing this kind of benefit or reward that may come from a CLE product. So that avoiding of harm by choosing a clean label product is actually giving them the reward in their choice. So we're in this habit cycle, if you will, where they're changing their habits to avoid these negative consequences. And if they find something that allows them to avoid the negative consequences and it's a clean label, well then, by golly, that's what they're going to start using if they can afford it. So affordable options are key. If you look at the third bullet point on this list, there's a huge opportunity for these naturally occurring oils and plant botanicals. Things like olive oil, shea butter, citrus extract, coconut oil, aloe vera, pomegranate, papaya, all of these plants and naturally occurring kind of botanicals are really able to be leveraged in this space because they think that there is something to them. They perceive that there are some benefits that these plant botanicals could bring that would, kind of be the solution for them when they're looking for the right hair care product. Super interesting, super interesting. Now moving on to fabric care, here's where things started to shift just a little bit in a different way. This was the first category where suddenly the origin of the products started to make a difference. People were talking about wanting fabric care to be made in the USA. Now, it's a hypothesis. Perhaps that's because of the link of fabrics made in the USA. Perhaps, that cotton campaign from years ago in my life were at play here. Again, we didn't quite get to that in this particular deep dive, but really interesting that where the products came from mattered in the context of fabric care. But again, they also were looking for things that were free from chemicals and man-made poisons, free from added dyes and fake fragrances, of course, simpler, recognizable. And the overarching theme for all of this, right, is non-toxic, not harsh, non-irritating, safe to use. So, again, when that's kind of universal across all of these, that toxicity is really where their concern lies. And if they perceive something as toxic or having a toxic effect, they might want to avoid that at all costs. Now, what's interesting here is the brands that were chosen. They have found products offering the efficacy they want while meeting their clean label wishes. And by that, I mean, people were using Woolite, they were using Purox Free and Clear, they were using All Free and Clear, they were using Arm & Hammer Free and Clear. So what's the common vernacular in those brands, for instance? The free and clear label. So it's interesting that those free and clear claims on those very traditional products were working for the CLE community. There were people that were saying, OxiClean, 7th generation, Full Circle, EcoTouch, and I'm sure down the road there'd be a growing list of brands as well. But again, price is that pain point. They can't go too far, especially thanks to the products that the more affordable options have provided for them. They've given them a solution with these free and clear claims. So that's just something really poignant to keep in mind for that. When it comes down to the ingredient level, they talked about bleach, right? They talked about the harm of bleach and the danger of bleach. And even though they know that bleach cleans things and cleans clothes and gets your whites whiter, they still balance that with their concern. There's definitely a trade-off there. And that concern, again, has to goes to on some level the potential carcinogens in bleach and the toxic harm that it can cause to people. Chemicals they want to avoid, artificial smells, fragrances, dyes. GMOs came up here in fabric care, which was really interesting because this was the first category where GMOs came up as something they wanted to avoid. Formaldehyde, benzols. Anyway, super interesting. So what does all of this mean? Again, we can take it to the level of insights. That means that, let's think about it for a minute. These are products that touch their skin 24 hours a day. And when I say these products, maybe not the fabric care products themselves, but the clothes that they wash, they wear every day, the sheets that they sleep on every single night, the towels that they use when they're coming out of the shower or the bath. So these products that are being treated with the fabric care products, if you will, are touching them. So they were less specific about the ingredients to avoid per se, but they know and are concerned about chemicals that are perceived as bad. And bleach, again, similar to the fluoride, that's where it's really polarizing there, right? There may be a natural bleach alternative that could be an opportunity for a company, and it would be really interesting to test some of those out with this community, but that could just be a solution that they want. And again, they need the reassurance from those manufacturers that those products are free and clear because they're trusting them at this point. And certainly a company wouldn't want to let people down if they have built up that credibility and trust by having something not be so. Super interesting. Finally, the last category that we took a deep dive into was body care. Now, when it comes to body care, There was some overlap where people were talking about, body skin, and also, they couldn't help but go to facial skin. So there's a little bit of overlap, kind of into the facial skincare and the rest of their body skin care. But that's what we're talking about here. And it's not just, kind of a soap that people might use. It's also a lotion and it's a shave cream. So we were in that space really of any, kind of products, sunscreen came out, all of those categories. So yes, soaps, primarily soaps, lotions, sunscreen, shaving cream, or gel. Those were the products that were discussed in this particular category or in this particular deep dive. So again, no big surprise. They want understandable ingredients. And they don't want things that can cause harm or hurt the body, right? They also were interested in those natural ingredients, things found in nature. And here's where we dialed up the cruelty-free, not tested on animals, vegan-friendly, non-GMO. This was so different, the feel of that in this category. So they were really paying attention to those things a little bit differently. Now, again, makeup was kind of on people's minds in this as well, as they were talking about the care of their facial skin, if you will. So that's probably talked about a lot more, as some of you who might be in this category, as you might know that don't test on animals, keep it vegan friendly. That's talked about a little bit more, and those messages are getting through to consumers. Now, when it comes to brands, this was the category where there's the longest list of brands being used. Tom's of Maine, Carol's Daughter, Herb Day, Trader Joe's, Nature's Gate, Method, The Body Shop, Seventh Generation, Burt's Bees, Honest, Alba, Kiss My Face, Mrs. Meyer's. I'm going to stop there, or I could talk to you for another probably 5 minutes going through the list of products that were being used in body care. There's a lot of them. And what's interesting is, although price is a real pain point, as with the other categories, a lot of these people were buying them at discount stores, right? So they were finding the bargains on these products wherever they were going. At least one of the individuals in this particular study, and there were the fewest participants in this, so that's why I say one of them in this particular segment, was not using any retail body care products. They were just washing in water, and that was it. That was pretty much as far as they were going to go. They were not going to put anything on their bodies. So an extremist, but we had their point of view in there. The ingredients were not dissimilar to some that you've seen before. When I say the ingredients to avoid. So those would be things like the DEA, TEA, sodium lauryl sulfate, and the sulfates, the phthalates, the
phthalates.
Sarah and I have this joke that I can't pronounce this word. So say it one more time, Sarah.
Phthalates.
Thank you very much. The parabens, the formaldehyde, benzophenone, artificial dyes, colors, and fragrances, and even alcohol. Just knowing that there is this list, fewer ingredients were mentioned as being clean, and longer lists of ingredients as being unclean. And they really are like, anything that can harm the body is a problem here. Pretty much, if they think that it can be a carcinogen, it's unclean. The things that they were perceiving as clean are those, again, plant-based ingredients like the aloe, the shea butter, or even those essential oils. So let's talk about what this all means and some insights gleaned from this one. Interestingly, the mood of this conversation, and when I say this conversation, I was moderating all of these, the mood here was even more anxious than the mood in the other ones. They were bringing out deeper anxieties and deeper worries. They had serious concerns about the link to their overall health and their beauty regimen. They were very concerned, as I said, about cruelty to animals and looking for vegan products and those kind of plant-based, natural, I don't even want to call them ingredients, but natural substances that are included in these. And they have this affinity towards these products that are sharing their values, their personal values, which are forward thinking from some of the other kind of what we might call a mainstream consumer. So it's very different in mood and feel. And we can dig into some hypotheses about why as we kind of segment into or segue into what we're learning. One hypothesis, for instance, has a lot to do with whether the, I'll switch to the next page, but I'm going to start with the second bullet here, whether those worries and anxieties have to do with the visible signs of damage, validating their concerns, right? So for body care and hair care, this hypothesis that I'm noodling around with is that they have a heightened worry and anxiety because they've seen rashes on their skin or they've lost some hair. So they've had visible results and signs of damage caused by these ingredients that they perceive as unclean. So it's kind of changing their habits in that way, right? It's cueing danger, therefore it's validating and their concern about these products. Anyway, bumping back up to the first thing, I do think that in terms of drawing a conclusion, there are some opportunities here to leverage ingredients perceived as clean label and some of those, botanicals, and are there properties of those botanicals, for instance, that can be pulled into the next generation of toothpastes, for instance, or the next generation of shampoo, really leveraging, the power of nature, certainly for this target. And finally, kind of the last bullet point on this page, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody, and hopefully people will chime in with what their takeaway is. But this last bullet point here about the efficacious clean label products joining the non-food categories. So as some of these perceived clean label brands that are not quite as big, but as they come to the market and they deliver on a product, or they deliver to them a product that works, it could very well be that the larger companies will see that migration towards those alternatives, right? So at first, right now in oral care, for instance, the major players, they own that space, right? People believe them, they're credible, but a lot of that is because what we heard, and no offense if anybody from Tom's of Maine is on the line, but the biggest criticism for Tom's of Maine is it just doesn't work. So as those companies like a Tom's of Maine come up with products that are clean and also effective, we might see more movement from those major brands where they do have that credibility, but the clean label pull starts to be the stronger pull of those polarities. So again, these are just some of the things that we've taken in. If anybody else would kind of like to share their thoughts online, we can look at that chat, see if anything is popping up. And in a moment, we can switch to questions too. So this is where you can use your little menu item there to add, or your pull down menus, if you will, to either add a question or add a chat or a comment. Sarah and I will give you a minute to take that in, and then we'll field those questions for sure.
Definitely. Thanks, Karen. I think that it's just, the evolution is just so interesting, but then there's specific relevancy for each category as well. I think that there's nuances and important factors. I think the one thing that we really need to take away is that there's not one answer for each category. Right? You could think there could be, let's just shorten the label, but there's really, what's underlying that, what's driving that, and what's consumer perception. Really taking a moment, listening to consumers, and really saying, okay, what action can I take against that? What can I use that's going to delight them? What can I do that's really going to uncover something and provide that efficacy, but also something that's going to give them the transparency and satisfaction of the product. Love it across all the categories.
That's great. Sarah, the first question, I'm gonna throw it your way, but somebody shared a question that says, regarding the worries and concerns people shared, do you know where those fears are coming from?
Oh, okay. So let me think about that here for a second. When we started working within the free from movement in the clean label world, we did quite a bit of behavioral research, and we continue that on. And that harkens back to one of the things that we actually looked at quite specifically, interestingly enough, because the sources of information and the trustworthiness of information really differs between clean label enthusiasts and non-clean label enthusiasts. So interesting. All of us go to our family members. That's a key source. But the interesting thing about clean label enthusiasts is that they have a lot more sources than some other people do. They're looking online at multiple different sites to get this type of information, being very active in the conversation, just like they're active in our community. So that behavior that we're seeing is very pervasive in a lot of things that they do. So, I think that they're looking both at information that's from credible sources, but on the internet there's some information from sources that is a little bit more skeptical. We'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Sarah.
So I think it's a variety of places.
Yeah. Here's another one. and I can take this one because it's
Okay.
because I did the moderating. So could you expand on the insight about CLE looking for products and brands that share their values? And then the question was values in general or specific to animal pet care? And the reason why this is such a great question is because these are people that talked a little bit about their passions, right? And so, for instance, yeah, some of them might very well be involved in animal rescue. So, of course, cruelty to animals is going to be an issue for them, right? They have this. A few of the people have this cause mentality, right, where they want to conserve water because it's the right thing to do in the world. Therefore, companies that are talking about that are going to be companies that are aligned with them. So yes, it was in the space of animal cruelty and pet care, but it was also beyond that, right? The vegan values was really interesting because there are people who choose to be vegan, again, in that kind of, I don't want to eat meat because of their connection to animals. And so if a company is talking about that, right, then that's a shared value that they have. So strongest in that animal pet care space, but also you could say that if a company is talking about, wanting to be transparent and transparency is a value of theirs, then that will resonate with them. If a company is talking about, again, water conservation or, not polluting the environment, that will resonate with this target. So that's the indication that we have, is that it's tapping into personal values if a company is also talking about those same values.
And Karen, you bring up a great point about pet as well. So that's not one of the categories that we investigated, but that was one category that we had a lot of engagement with. It was outside the scope of what we presented today, but it's pretty amazing how in pet that there's definitely an influence of clean label. As we learn together with others, it could be an opportunity to kind of do other deep dives, if those even on the call would be interested, if you're involved with pets or other types of categories. This is just one way we're leveraging the community, and so hopefully it might spark some ideas of ways that might be relevant for you.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, I think it was 6th on our list. We stuck with 5
Yep.
deep dives. So yeah, I think that one was 6th on our list of being important for those people that it matters to. It matters greatly.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for those questions. Great questions. And just thank you from both Sarah and myself for your time today, and for your questions engaging here at the end. Sincerely appreciate that. I hope you found it interesting, and stay tuned. Certainly reach out to us if you're looking for more information. But we appreciate your time, and save the date. Our next webinar is going to be on August 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So the topic is TBD at this point. But that's when it'll happen. And certainly if you were made aware of this particular webinar, you will likely be made aware of what our next one is. So we will trust that the system works, and that you will find out a little bit more as the time comes nearer. So thank you again. And again, reach out with any questions.
Have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.